My name is Margaret, and this is my story. She began in a calm, measured tone. People may think that as we grow older, we lose our strength, our wit, our sharpness. But I'm here to tell you that's far from the truth. We may grow older, but we still have a unique power. The power to understand life's joys and its heartaches, and when needed, take revenge. She paused, her smile deepening as she remembered the moment that had sparked the entire story. It all started the day my daughter, Rachel, thought I was just an old useless mother. But she was wrong, and I was about to show her how revenge is done. A few days earlier, Rachel had stormed into the kitchen, her face flushed with frustration. "Mum," she snapped, "you just don't get it anymore. The world's moving at 100 miles an hour, and you're stuck in the past. You're outdated." Grandma had looked at Rachel, the anger in her voice cutting through the otherwise peaceful atmosphere. Rachel, young and brash, had always underestimated her mother's wisdom, but Grandma Margaret was used to it. She had weathered many storms in her life, and this one was no different. As Rachel went on, complaining about the modern world and how everyone was too old-fashioned to keep up, Grandma remained quiet, listening. Her face remained calm, a gentle smile playing at the corners of her lips. After a long pause, Grandma finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "If you think you know everything, my dear, you still have a lot to learn." The words hit Rachel like a bolt of lightning, but she didn't know yet just how much she would learn in the coming days. Later that week, Grandma set her plan into motion. As Rachel continued to dismiss her advice and scorn her for being out of touch, Grandma retreated to her garden, the garden that had been her sanctuary for so many years. The warm New Zealand sun bathed her in light as she carefully plucked the most vibrant roses and other flowers from her garden. But amidst the fragrant blooms, Grandma pulled out a small jar labeled Kiwi Extra-Hot Chili Sauce. This wasn't just any sauce. No, this was her secret weapon, a sauce she'd perfected over the years. A little bit of spice, a little bit of heat, enough to stir anyone into action. As Grandma mixed the sauce into her famous potato salad, she couldn't help but smile to herself. This wasn't going to be just another meal, she thought. This was going to be a lesson Rachel would never forget. The evening of the dinner arrived, and the house was filled with the usual warmth and comfort of home. Grandma placed a large bowl of potato salad on the dining table, setting it next to the roast chicken and fresh bread. Rachel sat down eagerly, not suspecting anything. She dug into the food with her usual appetite, taking a generous serving of the salad. As she chewed, her face slowly began to shift. The first bite didn't seem to faze her, but soon the heat from the chili sauce began to take effect. Rachel's face flushed red, her eyes widened, and she suddenly stopped chewing, looking around in panic. "Mum," she gasped, her hand trembling as she reached for her water glass. "What did you put in this?" Grandma sat across the table, watching calmly, her fingers returning to their knitting. Her gaze was steady, and her smile never wavered. "Oh, nothing too special, dear," Grandma replied innocently. "Just a little something to remind you of the heat of life." Rachel began to choke, the chilly heat building in her mouth. She grabbed for more water, but it only seemed to make the situation worse. Her cheeks burned with the intensity of the spice, and she looked at her mother in desperation. "Mom," she cried, "this is insane. What did you put in this?" Grandma's calm demeanor never faltered. She knew exactly what was happening, and as Rachel's discomfort grew, Grandma simply continued knitting. The scene played out with a striking contrast. the chaos and panic on Rachel's face, and the serene, almost amused composure on Grandma's. Rachel scrambled to find relief, her breath coming faster, but the more she drank, the worse it seemed to get. Sometimes, dear, Grandma mused to herself, her voice steady in the midst of Rachel's panic, it takes a little fire to wake up the senses. I didn't do this to hurt you, but to remind you that I'm still capable. That night, as Rachel sat in the living room, nursing her sore tongue with an ice pack, Grandma's smile grew. She sat in her armchair knitting, her thoughts quiet and composed. It was a moment of vindication, not for the pain Rachel had suffered, but for the lesson she had taught her daughter. You see, Rachel, Grandma's voice echoed in her mind, sometimes it's the quiet ones, the patient ones, who know exactly how to make a point. You don't always have to raise your voice to teach a lesson. A little heat, a little spice, that's all it takes. The next morning, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, her eyes red from the previous night's ordeal. She was quieter now, reflecting on what had happened. She could no longer deny that her mother had something she hadn't recognized before, a quiet strength that she had overlooked for years. As Grandma passed through the kitchen, Rachel looked up, meeting her mother's gaze for the first time in a long while. "Mom," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted." Grandma smiled warmly, her expression full of the love and understanding that only a mother could have. "It's all right, dear," she replied. "You've learned, and that's what matters." Later, as they sat together for tea, the two of them in the warm embrace of the kitchen, Grandma reflected on the situation. "Sometimes," she said, her voice rich with wisdom, "the best way to take revenge isn't about doing something big or loud. In life, you just need to add a little spice, a little heat. That's when the true lessons are learned." Rachel listened carefully, a new respect for her mother filling her heart. The bond between them had changed, deepened in ways Rachel hadn't fully understood until now. She realized that her mother's wisdom was not born from age alone, but from a life fully lived, a life rich with experience, lessons, and love. The story had come full circle, and with it, Rachel had a new appreciation for her mother's quiet strength. And as they shared their tea together, Grandma reflected one last time. "Sometimes, my dear, it's the quietest of actions that carry the loudest lessons. Never underestimate the power of a well-timed lesson, and never forget that age is but a number." And with that, the two women sat in the peace of the moment, their bonds stronger than ever. In the following weeks, Rachel's attitude slowly began to shift. The initial embarrassment from her mother's clever trick had faded, but the lesson lingered with her. Every time she caught herself thinking she knew better, she remembered the heat in her mouth, the panic, and the realization of how much she had overlooked. It wasn't just the spice that had burned her. It was the humility she felt after that night. Rachel began to help Grandma with more chores around the house. She'd sweep the floors, chop vegetables for dinner, and even dust the old family photos hanging on the walls, something she had previously left to Grandma. She didn't do it out of guilt, though that might have played a part, but because she wanted to learn. Rachel was starting to understand that Grandma wasn't just an old woman sitting in a chair waiting for time to pass. She was someone with wisdom, experience, and a sharp mind that could outwit anyone, including her.
One evening, while Grandma sat at the kitchen table sipping her tea, Rachel sat across from her. The air between them was still, the only sound being the occasional clink of teaspoons against cups. "Mom," Rachel said softly, her eyes lowered. "I've been thinking a lot about what you did, and I want to apologize again." Grandma smiled gently, her eyes crinkling with understanding. "You don't need to apologize, dear," Grandma replied, her voice full of kindness, yet with the same quiet strength that Rachel had come to respect. "You've learned something important, and that's what matters." Rachel looked up, her expression more earnest than before. "I always thought I was the one who had all the answers, that I was the one who understood the world, the one who knew what was best for everyone. But now I see that I was wrong. You've taught me that there's more to life than just speed and change. Sometimes the slow path, the patient one, is the one that holds the most wisdom." Grandma nodded, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. "You're beginning to understand, Rachel. It's not just about knowing what's next. It's about appreciating what's right in front of you." The evening stretched on with Grandma offering Rachel snippets of her life's wisdom, her experiences with love, loss, and the art of patience. Rachel had never realized just how much depth there was to her mother's life, how much history she carried in her heart. She had never truly seen her mother's strength beyond the surface of her wrinkles and graying hair. That night, as Rachel lay in bed, she couldn't help but think of all the moments she had taken for granted. Moments spent laughing with Grandma, learning recipes, and sharing stories. She remembered how she had always brushed it off as old-fashioned, and the weight of her arrogance began to sink in. A few months passed, and Rachel's respect for her mother only grew. One afternoon, as they were sitting together in the garden, Grandma mentioned something that caught Rachel's attention. "You know, Rachel," Grandma said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about something I want to do before I can no longer. There's something I've always wanted to pass on to you." Rachel looked at her mother, intrigued. "What is it, Mum?" she asked. Grandma smiled, her face lighting up with the spark of excitement. "I want to teach you the family recipe book. It's been passed down for generations, and I've been meaning to write it down, but life got in the way." Rachel's eyes widened. "I've always seen it, but I never thought to ask about it." Grandma chuckled softly. "Well, it's time you learned. The recipes in that book aren't just for food. They carry stories, memories, and lessons. Each dish has a tale to tell, a reason why it's made the way it is. You've tasted the meals, but now you'll understand the meaning behind them." The idea of preserving these traditions was a gift Rachel hadn't expected. "I'd love to learn, Mum. I think I'm ready now." For the next few weeks, Grandma and Rachel spent hours together in the kitchen, working side by side. Grandma explained the nuances of each dish, why certain herbs were chosen, why some spices were added at the right time, and why certain recipes took longer to cook. As they worked, Grandma shared stories from her childhood, how her mother had taught her these very same recipes, how they had made the meals together during difficult times, and how food had always been a symbol of connection in their family. Rachel began to realize that these were not just recipes. They were memories of her mother's life, struggles, and love. The slow simmering of broth was like the slow buildup of patience. The long hours spent kneading dough represented the effort it took to maintain relationships, and the final presentation of the dishes symbolized the wisdom earned over a lifetime. As they finished preparing a meal one afternoon, Rachel paused and looked at her mother. "You know, Mum, I've never realized how much history is in every meal we've made. I think I understand now. It's more than food. It's a legacy." Grandma smiled, her eyes misty with the pride of a mother who had seen her child grow and mature. "That's right, dear. And now it's time for you to carry that legacy forward. Pass it on to the next generation." A few months later, Grandma Margaret sat in her armchair, watching Rachel as she prepared dinner in the kitchen. The transformation in Rachel was undeniable. She was no longer the frustrated, dismissive daughter who had stormed into the kitchen months ago, but a young woman who was learning the depth of patience, the value of quiet strength, and the power of understanding. Rachel came into the living room, holding a tray of freshly baked bread and a bowl of soup. She set the food down in front of Grandma, her face glowing with pride. "I made your soup, Mum, just like you showed me. I think I finally understand what you mean about taking your time with things." Grandma smiled, her heart full. She looked up at Rachel, her voice soft but full of warmth. "You've come a long way, my dear. Sometimes life has a way of teaching us the lessons we need, even when we think we know it all." Rachel sat down beside her mother, taking a deep breath. "Mum, I want to thank you for everything. I never understood what you've done for us, for the family, and for me. I didn't know how much you sacrificed, how much you held together. Until now." Grandma reached out and took Rachel's hand in hers. "You're welcome, dear. I've always known you'd learn in your own time. You just needed to understand that sometimes it takes a little spice to wake up the senses."